Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good morning. My name is Matt Baker. I am the co-chair of the Post-YLF Activities Workgroup Committee, and we are welcoming you and excited to welcome you all this morning to our first YLF Post-YLF Activities event, YLF Self-Advocacy Workshop. We have a lot of presenters to meet with you today, and we're excited to share them with you. Just a couple housekeeping tips before we get started. This is being recorded so that those attendees can view it later on the YLF YouTube page. And then those attendees who weren't able to be with us today can also view it later. If you have any questions or comments, you can utilize the chat feature or the Q&A feature. There'll be staff checking that to make sure we capture anything that you have to say. We want this workshop to be as interactive as possible, so please use the chat feature and Q&A when you have a question or want to just make a comment about a presentation. With that, I will go ahead and pass it off to my co-host and my co-chair, Johnny.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Matt said, I am the co-chair for the Post YLF work group. Post-YLF activities work group, and I'm also an alumni from 2009. So I'm very excited to have our first workshop of the year. As Matt said, this workshop is going to um be about self self advocacy and how we could you know and how the independent living centers can play a role in that. We're gonna go ahead and get started right away with our first presenters. Um, I will read you each short bio on there, and then they will get to their presentation. First off, we have Emily and Brandy from Resources for Independent Living. Brandy Bio is a program manager for Resources for Independent Living, or RIL. RIL serves Yolo and Sacramento counties. Brandy has an A degree in sociology from California State University, Sacramento. Brandy started as an intern and has held multiple positions at RIL. Brandy has a speech disability and has spent many years in speech therapy. It wasn't until Brandy interned at RIL that he even realized sorry, that he was a person with a disability. It is Brandy's goal to teach people with disabilities and make these skills that will help them succeed in life and to show that people with disabilities are capable of everything and anything. In her spare time, Brandy likes to be around those she loves, go on hikes, and play board games with her family. Emily Miyoka is the youth services coordinator at RIL. Emily has a degree in deaf studies with a minor with a minor in cultural anthropology from Cal State Sacramento. Emily has been at RIL for a year now and is in charge of RIL's youth program. She has been teaching independent living skill classes and helping her consumers reach their goals while they are working with RIL. Emily has a learning disability and understands how it is to learn differently than your peers and to struggle in school. This is why she teaches others who seriously struggle and may need different accommodations to succeed. In her spare time, Emily enjoys partner dancing, playing cards with friends, and socializing with the deaf community in Sacramento. Give it up for them. And without further ado, I'll leave you with Emily and Brandy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Brandy Blohl. I am the program manager at RIL.
And I'm Emily Mioka, and I'm the Youth Services Coordinator at RIL.
So what we're here to talk about today is a little bit about RIL and the services that we provide. We're going to go over some things about our youth program. We're going to discuss a little bit about advocacy and what exactly advocacy is. And so what I wanted to start out with is RIL is an independent center that serves Yolo and Sacramento County. We have been around a very long time. Our core services include housing, information and referral, advocacy, independent living skills training classes, transition and diversion, assistive technology, and peer counseling. And Emily is our youth coordinator. And so I don't want to spend too much time on what our individual core services is. I think a lot of people kind of know that, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. But we were really here today to talk about our youth program and what advocacy is. So Emily, do you mind going over our youth program?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently right now for our youth program, we have independent living skills classes happening every Friday at 2 p.m. We're really working on trying to get a group started for those classes, just because having a group setting with those classes is kind of nice because you're able to meet your peers and you're able to discuss different topics. And our classes go over things like healthy relationships, budgeting and understanding credit, housing management, sex ed, and the transition from high school to college, and cooking on a budget, and mental health and emotional management. So any of those classes, we'll go over those topics on Fridays, and we'll discuss. Most of our classes are discussion based anyways. And we'll have activities that we do in the classes as well. But the real focus of the classes is to meet peers and to discuss these topics. And was there anything you wanted to add about the youth program, Brandy?
Our youth program is fairly new. It was always something really important to me to create a program like this. Unfortunately, what RIL is trying to do is have a youth program that is skills that aren't taught in high school that probably should be. And so when we say youth, we are talking about ages from 16 to 26, 28. And we just really wanted a place to obviously learn but for youth to come together and be able to meet one another. We did have to transition everything through Zoom, obviously, during the current times, but as soon as it is safe to do so, we would really love to have them back in our office. A lot of the classes that are really special that people seem to really enjoy is advocacy, housing, and any class that involves food, obviously. But for housing, I think housing is one of our biggest services that is requested. And there is a lot to go into housing. You know, there's not only the aspect of trying to find a place to live when you are transitioning out of your home, but there's a lot more to being housed. You know, you have to learn how to read a lease, and you have to learn how to pay your rent and everything that involves being independent on your own. And so that's what these classes are really, really for. And the next thing we wanted to talk about is advocacy. And what exactly is advocacy? Advocacy is an activity by an individual or a group that influences any decision, whether that's politics or economic or anything. We as people use advocacy in so many ways that I don't even think a lot of people know. When you go to the doctor and you are in pain and you need help, or if you are not feeling well, or if you are a student who is having a hard time in school and you need to talk to your teacher or your parents, that is all advocacy. I think that sometimes the word advocate and advocacy kind of scares people off a little bit. And our goal is to just really make sure that we teach those skills. And fortunately, you know, we kind of live in a world where if you don't ask for things, things aren't going to happen. And so it is our job to empower all of our consumers to feel that they are able to ask for help and to advocate for themselves. Does anyone want to share like a story really quick about how they advocated for themselves? Okay. So like I said, advocacy can be anything from speaking to your doctor to teachers to parents. And it's a really, really important skill that is hard to learn, but that is our job here. And that's why, and I know, you know, being from the YLF, you have definitely learned those skills, and that's great. And you guys are also everyone that was able to attend YLF has already done so much advocacy and has learned so much from that. I am a firm believer, though, and if you don't practice something, it becomes harder and harder to do. So whenever you are feeling like you need something or that your needs aren't being met, do not be afraid to reach out and to advocate for yourself.
We also I think REL is a really good organization for people with disabilities to know about just because of our core services. And we're also very much about helping people achieve whatever goals they may have. And our focus really is on being able to live independently, and self-advocacy is a very big part of living independently. And we actually do have some classes about self-advocacy. And we also know of a few workshops as well where students can go to discuss advocacy. And it is a very big, important part of anybody's lives. But yeah, we're very happy to be here and meeting you all and sharing this information with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bernie and Emily, for the awesome presentation and information about your services. To all of my guests and attendees, feel free to leave a comment in the chat. You can use the Q&A feature, or if you would like to if you would like to verbally say a comment, you could use the raise a hand feature. And with that, I'll hand it over to Matt.
Thanks, Johnny. Okay, I'm just going to double check the chat feature real quick. Make sure we're not missing anybody. No hands raised. The Q&A feature. Nope. Okay, I think we're all good. Thanks, Brandy and Emily, for your presentation. That was some great information. Let's continue the information train with our next presentation from Nellie and Alan from the Dale McIntosh Center. Nellie Gomez is the Youth Outreach Coordinator at Dale McIntosh Center in Orange County. Nellie has cerebral palsy and mainly uses a manual wheelchair out in the community. She started with the center as a volunteer in 2010, later becoming a paid staff. Nellie was also a part of YO, Disabled and Proud, in 2014. Growing up, she did not feel connected to her peers or appropriate services, but with the experiences she has had through DMC, she now feels connected to the disability community. Through her role as the Youth Outreach Coordinator, Nellie works to provide youth with tools for self-sufficiency and inclusion within their community. She likes to hang out with loved ones, play video games, and search for fashionable looks in her spare time. Alan Cruz is the Youth Community Liaison at Dale McIntosh Center. Alan is blind after having cancer at a young age and was born in Mexico City. He started with DMC in 2017 as a youth, and in 2018, he became a volunteer through YO, Disabled and Proud. Upon completion of his internship through YO in 2019, he was offered a job opportunity at DMC and graduated with his associate's degree in liberal arts with a focus on English to Spanish interpretation. Alan's long-term goal is to become a special education teacher. Besides his two passions of mentoring youth and assistive technology, Alan enjoys playing guitar and singing. Please welcome Alan and Nellie.
All right. Thank you, Matthew and Matt. And hello, everyone. So good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And we are honored to be here today and talk to you about the services that Dale McIntosh offer out here in Southern California, Orange County. Like Matt said, I am Alan, and I am the Youth Community Liaison at the Dale McIntosh Center. The Dale McIntosh Center is a nonprofit organization. We serve people with disabilities, and we facilitate equal access and inclusion in the community. The Dale McIntosh Center, we offered a program for youth ages 14 to 24 and that live in Orange County. Our youth program is youth-driven, which pretty much means that everything that we do comes from the ideas or needs of our youth, our participants. I like to put it as, we're the staff, but the youth are pretty much our bosses. They tell us what to do. They tell us what they want to learn about, what they want to see. They have to do a lot with our programming. We do have a youth shirt, and that youth shirt was designed by our youth. So that tells you how much our program is youth-driven. We typically would meet in person before this whole pandemic started. We would meet at the Anaheim Accessibility Center. It's a pretty cool place. It's big enough for us to do a lot of activities such as like cooking, we were able to have different sessions when we had our fun Saturday. We had a station for like PlayStation, we had a station for arts, we had a station for um, board games, card games. We even had a station for karaoke. But unfortunately, due to the whole pandemic, we had to move on to virtually. So now we still meet every Saturday um, through Zoom, and we meet from 1:30 to 3. Um, and the programs that we offer each Saturday are um, Live Out Loud or LOL, which is the one where we just have fun and we give the youth the chance to socialize, to talk to their peers, and then just pretty much just have fun. Um, then we have Independent Living Skills, where we talked about everything that had to do with independent living skills, how to live better, right? Again, a lot of these topics don't come from us; they come from them. They tell us, "Hey, we want to learn about traveling with a disability. We want to learn about how can I help in the community." And so we take those ideas, and as a staff, as a team, we put a lesson together, and then we bring them what they ask for. So that's independent living skills. Um, Next, we have inclusive improv, which is pretty much just acting but without a script. And so some of the youth really enjoy that. It gives them a chance to speak out. Some of them have even surprises because they're usually pretty quiet. But when this group comes around, they love it, and they participate, they talk, and we're like, dude, that's awesome. So that's inclusive improv. And then last group we have is how to work it. I know it might sound like it must be something like with dancing or exercising, but it's not. How to work it is a group that it's all about getting ready for work. That explains um, resumes, interview skills, application skills. Um, I have also bring presenters from like different places to let them know what they're looking for when they're hiring. Um, I brought presenters to talk to them about accommodation at a workplace, advocacy at a workplace. And so it's mostly to get them ready for work. That group is run by me. And so that's my job, to bring all those kind of opportunities, and also possibly bring opportunities to youth for them to get some work experience within the community. And so that's our events that we have every Saturday. We do have social media as well. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Youth Connect. DMC Youth Connect. So DMC Youth Connect. We are found with that name on Socialgram and Facebook, like I said, Instagram and Facebook. And with that, I am going to let Nellie talk to us about the next part that we're going to present about. Nellie.
Okay, so with our program, we know that, self-advocacy, it comes up a lot in our daily lives, like out in the community, like at work, at school. It comes up with our parents, with doctors, in relationships. So it's definitely a part of our program in a lot of the groups that we offer, like independent living skills, how to work it, and sexual self-advocacy. With independent living skills, we teach important skills and talk with youth about being self-advocacy in their daily lives. So again, self-advocacy comes up a lot in our daily lives. So we give them a space where they can talk about that, and where we can do like different activities, like maybe they want to role play something that they're like wanting to advocate on, or we have like hands-on demonstrations, scenarios. We give them a space where they can feel comfortable in practicing being a self-advocacy. How to Work It provides like education on topics like accommodations in the workplace, like how do you go about that, and disability disclosure. And Alan's brought a lot of presenters that do talk about those things, and it's really like useful, it's informative, and it's fun to like know about. And one of our most recent groups that we launched in 2020, but right now it's on hiatus because we're virtual, it's sexual self-advocacy. So that teaches youth that want to take charge of their own sexual health. And it's a space where we can talk about like communicating needs, boundaries, and consents, because those things are very important when it comes to relationships. And lastly, it also comes up with our youth advisory committee. So they are a group of youth who help us keep our youth program youth-led and youth-driven. Like Alan said, meaning everything that we do in our groups comes from the ideas and needs of the participants. So the youth advisory committee right now is a group of 3 youth. So what they do is that they take leadership roles. They learn how to be leaders. They're role models to new youth, like helping them get youth, feel welcomed in our program. So their feedback is really important to us because for the things that we do well and how we can improve. Several things have been accomplished with their participation. I believe in 2019 was the date where they raised like about $1,000 in one of our fundraisers. They helped us design our youth shirt. Our new program name, we've gone through several program names. We used to be called DMC, Youth Independent AF, which stands for and fun. But now we're DMC Youth Connect because that's what our program is all about, connecting youth to each other and to services in the community. So yeah, so this is how we do self-advocacy because again, it comes up a lot in life, right? So, and one of the cool things is that Alan, my coworker, as he mentioned, he was a youth within our program and he has a lot of experience with self-advocacy. I myself have struggled with self-advocacy throughout the years, but being a part of this program has definitely helped me develop those self-advocacy skills. Alan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we all know that self-advocacy not easy, right? Like Nelly said, sometimes she still struggle with it. And I myself struggled with it when I was young. I didn't even know that self-advocacy was a term, right? I always know it as speak up for yourself and say what you want to do. But growing up, at least in the Mexican culture, you are told not to talk or not to say anything back to your adults, right? Meaning your parents, meaning your teachers. And so through high school, there was a lot of things where I was put through. And I didn't speak up because they have always taught me that never to talk to your adults, right? Never talk back to your adults and let them do what they were telling to do because it was for your best. But I had an experience where there was a class that I was not passing because it was too hard for me. I think it was like honor history. And then I was like, dude, this is not my group. I don't belong here. I tried because I always gave things a try. I never quit on the first try. I always give things a try. And so, I kept trying, but I think after like the 3rd or 4th exam that I failed, I was like, okay, I'm not for this class. I need to go back to my regular history class. And so I think that was one of the first times where I started like advocating for myself, which I found that was the actual term for speaking up for yourself when I became part of Del Macintosh. And with the Del Macintosh as being a youth, like Natalie said, and being part of the youth committee, I learned, self-advocacy is not just speaking up for yourself, but you also have to do it in a nice way, right? Because I used to come a little more aggressive, right? And so we know that when you advocate for yourself, you don't want to be aggressive. You want to be assertive, right? You don't want to be aggressive or passive. And so, I learned all these details with the Dell Macintosh Center. And so from there, I was able to apply it to my personal life and use self-advocacy for myself better in college, with my family, at work, and stuff like that. And so I try to bring that to the youth program to let them know, hey, sometimes I'm not really saying that you have to talk back to your parents or your doctors or your teacher, but you know yourself better, right? You know what you like best, what benefits you best, what needs you need. And so, you know, speak up, right? Do it in a nice way, do it in a respectful, assertive way. Um, and so with that being said, um, if you would like more information or there's any of you that are interested and learn more about our services or joining our program, um, in our flyer, you can contact Nelly through email. I will drop both of our emails right now on the chat as well. You can contact her by email or by phone at our office, and we'll be more than happy to provide you with more information about our services, um, or even to schedule something to make you become part of our program. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Alan and Nellie. So before we let you guys go, I just want to see if there are any questions for Nellie or Alan on their presentation. You can go ahead and drop those questions in the Q&A box, the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature, and we can go ahead and unmute your mic so that you can verbalize your comment or question. Reading the chat, it looks like there was a comment from Brandy that said, yes, great point, Alan. So, okay. And I'm just double checking to make sure I'm not missing any raise hands. Looks like we're good. Okay. Up next, we'll have Johnny.
So awesome, thank you, Nelly and Alan again. We just got a comment from Cynthia. Great job, everyone. I love seeing all the progress. Thank you, Cynthia, for your comment, for stopping by and being a proactive YLF alumni. Our third presentator is going to be from Sarah from Resources for Independence Central Valley. Sarah Harris is a program manager at Resources for Independence Central Valley for the local California Council of the Blind Fresno chapter president, as well as the first vice president for the statewide organization. She is a mom, a wife, an advocate, and coffee lover. She believes that equity and equality for people with disabilities benefits everyone. She has worked with school district, local, county, and state government entities and places of public accommodation to ensure accessibility and usability of goods and services for all to advocacy, awareness, and education. And with that, I'll leave you all with Sarah.
All right. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. And thank you, Johnny, for that great introduction. And like Johnny said, my name is Sarah Harris, and I'm a program manager for Resources for Independence Central Valley. We serve Fresno, Kings, Madera, Merced, and Tulare counties. It's a big, big, wide spot there. And I oversee assistive technology, systems change, as well as my favorite, youth empowerment services. And I still provide direct service to youth as well. As many of our other panelists here probably can attest to, we have had a very large uptick in consumers during the pandemic. And at RACV, we have jumped in and we have zoomed everywhere. We've made things work. And so I want to tell you about a couple of different things that we have going on that you can participate in as well. One of them is our youth group for ages 16 to 28 for youth and young adults, and that is called Be About It. because we don't just talk about it, we got to be about it. And that happens every Friday from 3:30 to 5. And we are actually going to be celebrating next Friday on the 2nd. Will be our 1-year anniversary of being on Zoom every week. This is a program that used to just meet every month in person. It left out a lot of people because, like I said, we're, very rural area. And so not everybody could get into Fresno to make it to these meetings, but now we have youth all across California that are joining, 20 to 30 each week. We do great games, we watch movies, we tell really super bad jokes, and I mean bad jokes. And we also talk about skills, like advocacy, or how to talk to each other about different problems. We vent to each other about how we're feeling during the pandemic, and so forth and so forth. And if you're interested in being a part of Be About It and you'd like to get on our youth mailing list, you can just reach out to me. And I know that you have our information. Our flyer will be sent out to you as well. So the other thing that we have going on right now is a special program called Youth Empowering Youth. And that program brings youth, just like you, into virtual classrooms all across the Central Valley to talk about all kinds of different skills that are important to those students in the classroom. So we start off with an initial visit where we come in and we say, hey guys, what do you want to learn about? What's important to you? And it could be anything from decision making to learning about different cooking methods. It could be career exploration and so many more things. We have 2 youth interns that are heading up that program, which is super, super awesome. And that all came out of bringing youth with me when we were in person and going to classrooms and seeing how the youth were reacting to hearing from other youth. I'm youthful, but I'm not a youth. And so I saw the magic that was happening and wanted to recreate that in a bigger way. And it's very funny because our plan was to do this virtually in some ways, but then we had to. So we were able to jump in and make that happen. We also provide, like I said, direct service. And one of the things that I feel is super important to know is we are very individualized. We start off by putting together a person-centered plan, really sitting down and learning about what each individual wants out of life, because we want to know what's important to you. And we can sit down, we talk about what you like, what you don't like, what works for you in different settings, what doesn't work for you in different settings, as well as your circle of support, your hopes and dreams, where you're at in your community. And we take all those different pieces and we take them together to make an action plan that is your step-by-step roadmap to meeting all of your goals, because each goal has some steps to it. If you've never dribbled a ball, you're probably not going to be a basketball star until you learn how to dribble the ball, right? We also have a big thing coming up, and I sent the flyer to Matt as well to share with you, and that is our Self-Advocacy conference. That is virtual, so everyone can come. It's so awesome, right? And it's free. And that is going to be held over 4 Tuesdays here in 2021. It'll be April 13th through May 4th, every Tuesday, 2 sessions, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. We're going to cover all kinds of different areas of self-care, fitness, well-being, health, advocacy, as well as, work. What is work? How to get to work? And what does that roadmap look like? So please, if you're interested, register, and you can come in and sit in on that as well. So today, though, we are here to talk about advocacy, and I've loved what everybody else has had to say. So I hope I can follow and do a good job here. And so what I wanted to talk about are the 5 questions that you should ask yourself when advocating, because sometimes maybe you're in the moment and you're upset, and something's not going to come out right, and maybe you're not going to communicate what it is that you are trying to say to whoever this may be that you are advocating to. So we have to remember advocacy is education, and we want to be able to educate people in the best way possible of what our needs are. So the first place to start was by asking yourself, what could make the situation better? And when you stop and you think of a solution and you problem solve it, you're going to move, away from that griping mode of just being angry and saying, I don't like this, to I don't care about this, or I'm not feeling comfortable about this because of this. And so I'm going to share a little thing with you guys. So being on the camera is super scary for me because I'm blind. So as long as I'm doing this and I'm talking, I am good. But once I'm just sitting here, I get a lot of anxiety. So one of the things that I always tell people is, hey, I can stay on the camera for a little bit, but you may see me shut it off and on. And that's because it is something that's a little uncomfortable to me. And once I tell people that, they're okay. Even if it's at the top of the hour, somebody says, leave your camera on, I want to see you. I always step in and I tell them about my concerns and how I feel. And then it's okay. But it's having that solution and bringing that forth to someone that really makes a difference. The second thing to ask yourself is, okay, is it worth it? Is this problem worth jumping out there and saying something about? Because sometimes there's things that maybe we just need a simple attitude change about. If it's something simple, like maybe you don't like your school colors, like your colors of your school are purple and gold, and you'd rather them be, I don't know, green and pink, is it really worth stepping out and making a big fuss about it? Probably not, because you're only going to be at your high school for a few years or your college, and then you can move on and just forget about it, or you just don't have to buy their stuff. So you always got to think, is the problem really, really worth making a fuss about? So the next thing to ask yourself is, how can I say what I'm feeling in the best way? You want to use words like I feel, or when this happens, I have this sort of anxiety. You don't want to point fingers at anyone. You don't want to say, when you tell me this, you hurt my feelings, and be pointing fingers at someone, because it can cause more of a defensive mechanism to come up from this person that you're talking to. And you want to make sure that you're keeping the conversation respectful. If it's an issue maybe within your city or your town and you're talking to a city official, you want to make sure that you're building that relationship and you're talking to them about your solution that you may have in mind, brainstorming about that solution, but you don't want to run in yelling and screaming, because it's really not going to get you anywhere. Oh, the next one is a big one. Do I need some backup? And backup can mean a lot of things. Backup can mean that you may need to do a little bit of research. You may need to find out what the solution could be, or maybe there's a law involved. Maybe there's something that, is supposed to be happening, and it's a law or a guideline or a best practice, and someone is not doing it. For instance, one of the things that has came up a lot right now with virtual school is IEPs not happening, and that's out of compliance, right? They need to be, giving students an IEP all the time. And so it's important to have that law, in your hands, that you can mail out to whoever it is that you need to be talking to and advocating about that issue. When you have that backup of that research and, having the language of a law, it makes such a difference. The other kind of backup is maybe you need another person there with you. Sometimes it's really awesome to have support, and maybe it's someone else that feels the same way as you do. And maybe if you get nervous and you're stumbling over your words, they can jump in and help you out. And that's always a great strategy to have if you want to tag team an issue. And the very, very last thing to ask yourself, kind of when you went through all these steps, is that how brave am I? And that could be with a question mark or with an exclamation point. So, you know, how brave am I? How am I going to get out there and advocate for what I am wanting to do? How am I going to really make a difference in this situation? Can I do this, right? You got to psych yourself up. But then when you're all done, you add that exclamation point and you go, wow, I just did that. I am super brave. And once you have that aha moment of being brave, you're going to go so far. Because I can remember myself, and just to give you a little bit of history, so I've been blind for a little over 18 years. I lost my sight in a car accident. And you know, I stayed at home for a while. I had a baby. I was a domestic goddess, as I like to say, and I didn't get out in the community. And then once I did, and I started, you know, working with folks in our local community to bring awareness, I just couldn't get enough of it. I won't even lie. And you learn along the way that you can really create some relationships and some allies in the community just by, you know, creating relationships and you know, talking more about, you know, other things that are going on. Maybe there's, you know, a movie coming out, or, you know, somebody likes a certain sports team, but really making those connections, and you become part of the solution that way. And it just continues to grow and grow. And I'm going to stop here and see if anybody has any questions or comments. And I hope I didn't go too fast for you guys.
This is Johnny. That was an amazing presentation and great 5 questions to ask yourself when self-advocating. Thank you for that, Sarah.
Oh, thank you, Johnny.
I am looking at the chat. We don't have any questions, but if you have a question you would like to ask Sarah, you could drop in the chat. You could send it with the Q&A button, or you could raise your hand. Giving it just a couple more seconds. Alan, but he agreed with a lot of the points you were making.
Awesome, thank you, Alan.
And with that, I'll thank you once again. I'll pass it on to Matt for our next speaker.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Sarah. Actually, before we move on to our next presenter, I have a question for all the attendees about Sarah's presentation. And the first one who puts the answer in the chat may find themselves getting a gift card from us. So my question is during Sarah's presentation, she mentioned 5 questions to ask yourself while self-advocating. One was, what could make the situation better? Is it worth it? How can I say what I'm feeling in the best way? Do I need some backup? And then the last one was what? What was that last question? Having someone there was a backup. So that's not it, but great try. One question. It was the last topic she was talking about. Yes, Erin, that's right. She did talk about her accident, but that wasn't the question that you should be talking about when self-advocating. That was the question I was referring to. Is it worth it? Nope, not that one.
Should we give a hint, Matt?
Sarah, if you would like to give a hint, go ahead.
Let's give a hint. So it's how blank am I? How blank? Fill in the blank.
Not happy, Ian. Close. Ooh, strong. Getting closer.
Let's getting closer. And think about a warrior is blank.
Oh, Sarah said confident, confidence. That's important, but that wasn't the word. Independent. Oh, these are all great words. We're getting closer.
Getting closer. It starts with a B.
There we go. Winner, winner. Robbie Brenda. Brave. Yes,
Woo!
that is the answer. Congratulations. We'll connect you with your gift card after the presentations are over. Okay, so with that little game, we'll go ahead and move on to our next presenter, which is Hector from the Southern California Resource Services for Independent Living. Hector, as a person who intersects several communities, Hector Ochoa has been an advocate for as long as he can remember. From an early age, Hector quickly learned to advocate for himself and his brother, who is nonverbal and has an intellectual and physical disability. Now, Hector's passion for activism shines through his work as the program director for advocacy and public policy at the Southern California Resource Services, an independent living center which helps people with disabilities lead full lives. Additionally, among his many duties, Hector assures that the voice of the disability community is continuously at the table by serving as a county commissioner for Supervisor Hilda Solis on the Commission on Disabilities. In addition, Hector is the founding member and lead organizer of ADAPT Los Angeles, a national grassroots effort that mobilizes activists into direct action and civil disobedience in order to uphold the civil and human rights of people with disabilities. Hector has also recently co-founded the Los Angeles Disability Pride Parade, an annual function which organizes thousands of people with and without disabilities to come together and celebrate human diversity. As a person of color who grew up with a disability, Hector also understands the importance of being a positive mentor to youth with disabilities. Year after year, he helps organize and run a summer leadership forum for high school students with disabilities. Hector deeply believes in an accessible, inclusive, and equal society for all, and he dedicates his professional talents and personal skills to make his belief a reality for countless people with disabilities. And with that, we'll go ahead and welcome Hector.
Thank you, Matt, for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to be here with all of you today, this morning. As mentioned, I am Hector Ochoa. I am the Program Director at Southern California Resource Services for Independent Living. We are one of 6 centers for independent living in Los Angeles County. We serve 44 of the 88 cities in LA County, from Southeast Los Angeles, where our Downey office is, to East Los Angeles and the San Gabriel Valley. We have offices in Pasadena as well as Arcadia. My role at the organization is wearing multiple hats. So aside from being the systems change person, or as my title would say, the Director of Public Policy, I also oversee our Independent Living Services Department and our youth program. In terms of our Independent Living Services Department, as some of my counterparts have shared, that includes all of the federal and state core services, as well as some additional programs and services that are unique to SCRS. Some of those include computer training if you are needing to learn how to use the computer either for self purposes or for employment. We offer seated yoga classes or accessible yoga classes taught by our instructor, Maria, who uses a wheelchair herself. Bi-weekly educational workshops, peer support groups for women, for men, for those a part of the LGBT community, and for our youth, as well as monthly ESL classes, money management classes, housing workshops, and benefits workshops. For our youth programming, a lot of our youth engagement right now is centered around STEM. So we have put a big emphasis on STEM, and part of this is because we surveyed not only our youth, but our broader community, and found that access to STEM in schools was not a reality. It was very difficult for students with disabilities to participate in STEM programming at their schools. So we have partnered with multiple organizations, including the Columbia Memorial Space Center, where the Apollo program started for NASA, and have STEM curricula taught to our youth by their engineers. And that usually happens around the summertime. And the current project that our youth are working on is creating a Braille embosser made out of Legos. That project has been completed, and now they're moving on to the second phase in partnership with USC to convert that Braille embosser made out of Legos and using 3D printing technology to refine it. And the hope is that we can create a functional Braille embosser that we can then, through our assistive technology program or department, be able to gift to those who are blind at no cost. So that is what our youth are working on at the moment. Obviously, as some have mentioned already, because of COVID and this pandemic, things are kind of on hold at the moment, but we do anticipate being able to pick that up, hopefully later this year. That's the goal. Aside from the STEM programming, our youth are very active, more so in the community than in our office. Our youth program, which, by the way, I do want to add and kind of plug in Johnny, who is facilitating today's webinar with Matt. Johnny was instrumental in starting our youth program back in 2010. So when Johnny extended this invitation to be here with you guys today, I was happy to participate. So thank you, Johnny, for helping plant the seed for what we've been able to create now. A lot of the engagement that our youth do now is out in the community and working with our advocates and our policymakers to not only learn how to engage with policymakers, but also share any ideas that they might have, within their community or on a larger scale, and just give them that firsthand experience and practice on learning how to engage and interact. So that is kind of where we left off before we were impacted by COVID last March. In terms of community organizing, and more so the area that I focus on, SCRS as an organization recognizes that SILs were founded on the premise of advocacy and community organizing. And so we continue that legacy that was started by our founding advocates to this day. You know, it's a big component or piece of what makes an independent living center. Some of the other ways that we approach advocacy at SCRS is by hosting monthly self-advocacy trainings that take place, again, in our community with our policymakers or in public spaces where our community has identified that there might be issues worth advocating for on a more systemic level as opposed to individual issues. We also host monthly professional collaborative meetings. We currently have a little over 100 participating entities and organizations that participate in our collaborative. And through this collaborative, we leverage the power that all of these organizations and entities have for larger countywide or statewide initiatives that might directly affect or impact either people with disabilities, youth, or older adults. We also leverage our ongoing relationships with our local policymakers and frequently host listening sessions at our offices for our consumers and our broader community so that they can engage and share concerns or ideas that could be of benefit to either the local community or on a statewide level, and sometimes even on a national level. And then lastly, as it was mentioned in my bio, every year SCRS organizes an annual Disability Pride Parade and Festival. This is one of the things that I dread, but also look the most forward to. Usually this event takes place in October. Last year was the first year that we could not have this event. It would have been our 5th year. This year, most likely, we still will not be able to have it. Although more and more people are getting their vaccine, for the sake of our community, particularly, we might decide or will decide that we'll have to wait till next year. But this event was inaugurated at our Downey office 5 years ago by one of its founders, Sarah Triano. Sarah was actually the executive director of the Silicon Valley ILC, a couple years ago. And she's moved on since then, but she came down from Sacramento to help inaugurate our event. And every year we welcome just about 4,000 attendees. And, we kick off every year by marching on the streets for 1 mile. Everybody brings their signs and is shouting and chanting and celebrating disability pride. Afterwards, we open up our resource fair. We have a petting zoo. We have activities for children. We have a snack station. People can grab, free popcorn and cotton candy and snow cones and all that. We have live entertainment, usually entertainers with disabilities. And we also feed everyone in attendance. We usually get catered food or a taco man, and we feed everybody in attendance. And everything, including the food, is at no cost to everybody that comes. The last thing that I did want to share is what I titled Continuing the Work. it's my opinion and really also my personal life motto that as a person with a disability, I have a responsibility to continue the legacy and carry the torch, so to speak, that was passed on to us by those that came before us. And though we might have civil rights protections in the United States, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act, this piece of legislation took a lot to come to fruition. And as an advocate, I cannot afford, and really the community cannot afford to lose these protections, which, believe it or not, can and have been threatened in the past. But we also need to remember to advocate for additional needs, whether it's more accessible, affordable housing, eradicating discrimination when it comes to employment, and giving disabled people more opportunities to jobs and careers, more adequate accommodations and better access to education at all levels of education, while also raising the bar in special education. As a personal testament or my personal experience, I don't hold good memory of my K through 12 education. And a big part of that is and was because my educators or the system did not believe enough in me that I should be mainstreamed, that I should be entitled to be challenged and to receive a full education. I'm not knocking special education, but it just wasn't beneficial for me. And did that affect me? Perhaps. I don't blame it. In the sense that I can't change what happened, but I do want to be able to change the outcome for those that are now going through that educational system. So some of my work focuses on that, in increasing access to education and raising the bar for people with disabilities so that we have better outcomes and so that we can change the narrative and the statistics. Because when you look at the numbers and the statistics for people with disabilities, especially in positions of power, there aren't many, if any at all. And we need to be able to change that. So when we think of self-advocacy or just advocacy in general, it would be my recommendation to keep that in mind, keep that at the forefront of your thoughts. That though it's important to advocate for ourselves, there's a much bigger community out there that we have to also think about. And more, and for me anyways, I am getting older, and if I'm not mentoring the younger generation, then I'm not doing a good job. That's my opinion. That I firmly believe that the people that are the youth that are coming up in their advocacy need to be mentored, need to be taught how to carry on and build upon the work that I'm doing right now. Otherwise, we're in big trouble. So anyways, I will leave it at that. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. Thank you, Matt and Johnny.
Great. Thank you so much, Hector, for that really informative presentation. I'm going to check the chat, and I think Johnny's going to check the Q&A box to see if there are any questions for Hector. I see in the comment section, Cynthia said, yes, Hector, 100% agree. Great job. Alan had said, would love to connect with you, Hector, if possible. Yeah, so we can go ahead and drop our info in the chat feature to connect to each other if we want. So I'll leave that up to you guys. Yeah. Johnny, do you see any questions in the Q&A feature?
We do have a question from Ian. For Hector, he has once completed, will the burial system be publicly released so that anyone with a 3D printer can download and print it?
That's a great question. It is the plan to make it available to the disability community at no cost. Whether we can release the actual file so that you can create yourself either at home or at your school, I'm not sure, but I did put my email in the chat. I'm happy to ask the Space Center or USC, and happy to get an answer for you, but I don't know definitively.
Awesome. Thank you for answering. And with that, we'll go on to our final presenter, Fiona from the Independent Living Resource Center for San Francisco. Fiona Hims, transit accessibility advocate and resident of the Outer Richmond, joined the SFMTA Board of Directors in 2021, nominated by Mayor Breed in late October. Fiona brings a lifetime of experience advocating for transit access for people with disabilities, such as herself. Fiona has lived with cerebral palsy and uses an electric wheelchair for mobility. She is the Director of System Things for the Independent Living Resource Center of San Francisco, a disability rights advocacy and support organization, a position she has held since 2014. There, she tracks the state and local advocacy issue and brings to ensure consumers are aware of advocacy opportunities in the community. She's also co-chair of Dignity Fund Coalition, as well as the Coalition of Agencies Serving the Elderly. She has served on several boards and task forces, including the Paratransit Coordinating Council, the Senior Disability Working Group of the Vision Zero Coalition, the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, and the Disability Organizing Network. She just completed 2 terms as the California State Independent Living Council, to which she was appointed in 2014 by Governor Jerry Brown. Hims graduated from Stanford in 2013 with a Bachelor of Arts degree with distinction in Psychology, Health, and Development. The other worked as a legislative intern for Assembly Woman Fiona Ma. And with that, I will leave it up to Fiona.
All right. Thank you, Johnny. And happy Friday, everyone. As Johnny said, my name is Fiona Hemsey. I am the Director of Systems Change at Independent Living Resource Center, San Francisco. I'll try and be brief today as being last. I know that you have already received lots of informative presentations from my esteemed colleagues. So I will just briefly describe Independent Living Resource Center, San Francisco, and our activities. We serve the city and county of San Francisco. So we have a smaller catchment area. We only have one office, one physical office. We, as have my colleagues, we have transferred all of our services remotely. We just recently had our 1-year anniversary of our physical office being shut because of COVID. But we have fully transferred all of our services. We have the same core services as were mentioned earlier. We also have a device lending library where all people, including youth, can check out devices for a month, specifically related to youth. Since COVID, we've been having, and I will send along the information for this, we've been having a series of workshops led by the nonprofit organization Kid Power that focus on self-advocacy and basically how to carry yourself with confidence and make sure that everyone is as safe as possible within defining safety in their own way. So that's, and I'll send along the flyer for that. What I wanted to focus on today, sort of, and it is nice that I'm building off of Hector's presentation, is really, you've heard a lot about self-advocacy today, as being able to advocate for yourself and your own needs, and that's true. There's all kinds of advocacy, as you've learned throughout this workshop, but what I want to focus on and sort of conclude with, if you will, is like looking at advocacy through more of the systemic lens and how you can advocate to your local officials. So it's sort of building on what Hector covered. So as was mentioned, I have sat on quite a few boards and commissions, and I'm lucky in that in my area. Well, the first one that I sat on was really around disability. The State Independent Living Council is kind of the governance body for independent living centers. So, and they in particular often look for young folks to serve on their council. So if you want to get an understanding of really how independent living centers work on the inside and kind of their governance and how they're funded, but also how you as an advocate can be a presence in the state advocating to the governor, because one of the functions of the SILC, in addition to money appropriation, is really being a voice for the education for the rights of people with disabilities at the state level, right? So it's advocating and advising to the governor on disability policy. So that is something I would recommend looking into, because for those of you that are young and from around the state, they are always looking for potential new members. I know that in San Francisco, they're, at least I'm lucky because they are always looking for good candidates with disabilities to be on local government boards. So a good resource for if you want to get on a board is, say you've gone to a lot of the youth programs that my previous panelists have mentioned. So you've developed your advocacy and you're like, okay, now what do I want to do? I've gotten a good handle on what to do with my own self-advocacy. I feel that I am in control of my life and now can advocate for myself. Although, as you also learned today, that can be kind of a lifelong battle for self-advocacy. So you think about that, you say, okay, I've got advocacy in my personal life, like how can I make an impact locally or on a statewide level? So serving, having the opportunity to serve on boards and commissions gives people with disabilities the opportunity to influence policy from the inside. So, for example, I currently serve on our transit providers board of directors. So I get to influence transit policy from the inside and really bring that sort of the perspective of the disability community and the community at large to the high-ranking officials that are at the MTA, and that's sort of a cool way to sort of have an impact. So if you want to do that, how do you go about doing that? Well, if you look on your municipality's website, they should have a list of boards and commissions that you can apply to and are currently accepting applications. And if you find one that has an area that you're interested in, I would just, apply for it. A lot of municipalities like Los Angeles and San Francisco have commissions that are specific to disability. Like I know Hector is a commissioner on the Los Angeles Commission, but it doesn't necessarily have to be on disability. The specific disability commission. One of the areas that we have found in San Francisco is because of how we're structured, we have so many commissions that it is important for the senior and disability voice to be on all the commissions, right? Because that means, like Hector said earlier, that means people with disabilities are in positions of power, not only on disability issues, but that perspective is being heard in all areas of the city, and we're speaking directly to elected officials. So I know that it can be intimidating to be on a board, and a lot of it is just like applying for a job, like preparing your resume, like maybe having like a casual interview. But I know it can be intimidating, and it can be intimidating to basically be a policymaker. But think about it as your next step after advocacy, like after your own personal advocacy. Think about how you can make an impact. Think about an area that you like to delve into, and think about an area, well, okay, how can I make an impact more globally? And I would say also, like, don't belittle the fact that you have a disability so you can't be in these positions of power. I think Hector and I would both agree that that people with disabilities have a unique perspective, and one that needs to be heard throughout local and state government. So don't belittle the fact that you have nothing to offer because you have a disability. In fact, I think it's the reverse. I think because people with disabilities have such diverse experiences, I think that they have many intersectional perspectives and many intersectional approaches to various issues that that can really help any city government or any task or board of directors that you might, or coalition for that matter, that you might take on to lend your unique perspectives to. So I know that was quick, and I also know we're running a little short on time. So if you are at all interested in talking to me about any of my own personal experiences, or getting advice on how to perhaps go about joining a board or commission, I would be more than happy to talk to you. I will put that information in the chat, and then I will also send along that flyer I mentioned earlier for the workshop that we have coming up on the 17th. And since it's on Zoom, anyone in California can participate in it. So I hope that this whole workshop sort of helps you, because the other thing is you all already have a lot of skills, because we know what a great program YLF is. So I think we hope that this workshop lets you know that there are a lot of opportunities to get involved in your community, and you can really build off the skills that you learned in YLF to apply them to your daily life. So I think I will pass it back to our moderators.
Thank you, Fiona, for the informative presentation. We're gonna give a couple of seconds to see if there's any comments in the chat or any questions people want to ask. We really do appreciate all of the attendees who joined us today, and as a reminder, this will also be uploaded to our YLF YouTube channel for future reference. I see a comment from Cynthia. Will there be any follow-up webinars? Yes, there will be. We are hoping to host for a year, but yes, for a year. We're still working out on the logistics, but we'll be sending out emails, reminders, posts on social media with all of that information.
Yes, so thanks, Johnny. Yes, Cynthia, thank you for your question. After this wraps up, you'll all be getting an email with a survey about today's presentation and a few topics that you might be interested in for our next webinar that is coming up. I want to go ahead and thank all our presenters today who joined us and shared so much information, so much helpful information about self-advocacy, not only for yourself, but the community that we live in. I want to thank our interpreters. I want to thank our text captioner. I want to thank everybody on the Post-YLF Activities Workgroup Committee for their efforts and their work on this. And as you can see, everyone is being added to the meeting because in any YLF event, we have to end with a YLF cheer. So feel free to turn your mics and your cameras on as I lead us all in a couple YLF cheers before we all get off here. So I'll wait as I see people starting to turn their cameras on. I think I'll go ahead and start. Give me a Y.
Hi.
Give me an L.
L.
Give me an F.
F.
What's that spell?
YLF.
Yo. Give me a Y.
Y.
Give me an L. Give me an F.
F.
What's that spell? Yo.
Everybody.
F.
YLF is what?
Dynamite.
YLF is what?
Dynamite.
Dynamite.
YLF is tick, 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 boom, dynamite. YLF is what?
Dynamite.
YLF is what?
Boom.
Dynamite.
YLF is tick,
Dynamite.
tick, 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 boom, dynamite. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate all of you. Stay well, stay healthy in this time of pandemic, and we appreciate you all and hope to see you at our next event. Thank you.